So we're just 1 week away from Passover. A week from tonight will be the first Seder, which we celebrate in our homes. But then Saturday night is our community Seder, and all of you are invited to come and journey through the Haggadah with us. If you haven't registered, you can find information on our website. But I would like to really offer this invitation to everyone. It is a remarkable experience, both a community experience and an inner experience. So consider yourselves invited. So we are just 1 week away from Passover, and now is our time to prepare. Our time to get ready for what in our tradition we call a moed. Moed means a meeting time. And it's really what it is. You know, we are going to meet again a holiday, a ritual, a celebration that we have done year after year after year for more than 2,000 years. I mean, it's really remarkable when you think of it. The Passover Seder, as we know it, was codified at the time of the Talmud. I'm talking 1st century CE. And we're still doing it. So it's a way for us to meet a millennia-old tradition. It's also a way to meet ourselves. At our Seder, which is the ritual meal we put together, we are invited into a kind of reenactment. We pretend, as we read the story of liberation, that it didn't happen to our ancestors some 3,000 years ago, when after several generations they find themselves enslaved to the pharaohs in Egypt. Rather, we have to pretend that this story is happening to us, that it is our story, that we are active participant in a drama that is unfolding as we tell the tale. And in order for us to get into it, we are given all kinds of props. You know, the Seder plates as all kind of little foods. For example, we take some parsley bitter herbs and we dip that in salt water and then we eat it. It's there to remind us of the bitterness of slavery when we were slaves in Egypt. It is there to help us taste again the tears of the slaves as they labored through harsh times. I mean, I have to admit it's a little bit far-fetched. You know, you really have to have somewhat of a fertile imagination to kind of put yourselves in the sandals of your ancestors back in those days and pretend you are reliving this moment. I mean, look at us. We're not slaves. Let's be clear with that. We're not slaves. No, we're not slaves. What we are is, we're consumers. We used to be citizens. But so much passé now, we don't even pay attention to it. At some point, I believe we used to be human beings. But that's also far receding in the past. Today, we're not slaves. We're consumers. So it's hard for us to, make a connection between the reality we live through and this storytelling of Passover. I understand. But as consumers, however, we are part of a whole system whose main purpose is to help us consume. In fact, if we really pay attention, everything around us has been transformed into a commodity or a product. Everything around us, the earth, what's in it, what's on the surface of it, the oceans, the seas, whatever is moving through the oceans and the seas, even the air we breathe, has been turned into a commodity or a product that we are charged to consume. Even the work we do. The work we do on a daily basis, our jobs, they all contribute to the perpetuation of this consumer's system, machine, of which we are a part. Even my job, no job is immune from it. My job, it used to be perhaps that people who chose the clergy route would be because they wanted to kind of step out of the system. They were supposed to be outside. And they were there to help us once in a while to step off the treadmill of the work week so that we can find ourselves in a little bit of an oasis for the soul. And so clergy was to provide that spiritual oasis, that harbor of peace and wholeness. But now we're told that if the churches, the synagogues, any kind of house of worship is dwindling, is because that what we are offering is not entertaining enough, is not exciting enough. How do you compete when all that you have to offer is silence, meditation, a space to steep yourself into the heart space of your being, a space to be quiet and open your mind perhaps to an inner wrestling? How can that compete with the 24/7 entertainment industry that is there to keep us busy, day in and day out, with no weekends, no rest? All that to keep us distracted all the time. So what they are telling us, members of the clergy, they are telling us that we need to embrace the market. We need to compete and step into the marketplace and perhaps reframe these millennia-old tradition that we have and, narrow it down to a few key points. Little phrases, some tweets that could work. Some snippet of Kabbalah, something that we could do to package it, put a little glitter on top of it, and sell it to the spiritual consumers, who then might show up at services to want to buy it. We're trapped, my friends. We are all trapped. No industry, no job is immune from the consumer's machine. It's not like we had a choice, right? We didn't have a choice. You, me, everyone, we were born into the bondage of this system. We didn't choose it. Little baby consumers, that was us. our parents unwillingly passed down to us, subtly or unsubtly, the tenets of what it takes for us to be members of this consumer society. Why? Because they wanted us to fit in. They wanted us to be, as everybody else, happy consumers of the society we were raised in. They sent us to these institutions, we call them schools. And there we were supposed to be socialized, into the context of what it is that we were supposed to become consumers. I mean, school told us what clothes to wear, where to buy it, what music to listen to, and where to buy that. School told us that our worth was going to be how much we would be able to consume, and we would only be able to consume an amazing amount if we got the right job in the right place. And so they trained us to become the cogs in the machine of consumer society. And then we passed it on to the next generation, didn't we? Because we too, as parents, wanted our kids to be happy and to fit in and to be good consumers like everyone else. And we didn't tell them that. It came through the guise of very subtle messages here and there we somehow had learned and passed on as truth. I was having this conversation with my daughter, Amalia. She's 15. And she's really much becoming aware of the gap between the reality of life as she imagines it and the reality of the track of school as she is finding herself trapped into. So we were having this powerful conversation a couple of nights ago. And she was telling me all the messages that she heard from me, from her mother, but also from other people around. That subtly brought her to start thinking like a good consumer in this society. She brought up one thing that really was eye-opening for me as part of our conversation. She said, there's this question that everybody asks the kids. Since we were very, very young, everybody, any adults that doesn't really know how to engage in a conversation, that would be the first question they would ask. And never anybody ever thought of the subtle message of that question. And how it channels a certain kind of understanding and guides us and pushes us younglings on this track of losing ourselves, of losing the deeper meaning, the bigger meaning of what our lives could have been. And she said, you know what that question is? She said, that question is, so, what do you want to be when you grow up? So, what do you want to be when you grow up? Close your eyes for a moment. Be with that question, What are we hearing when we say that? It's like, what am I hearing? What am I going to be when I grow up? Why are you narrowing this for me? Because when we say, what are you going to be when you grow up, it's like, what are you going to be in the context of this society that we have created around you? It's devastating. It's so narrow. You can open your eyes. And she made me swear, and I will, to never, ever ask that question again. And I'll never ask the question again. Instead, she said, I have another question for you to ask. She's thought this through for a while. She said, I have another question for you to ask. A question that is so much more empowering. She said, here's the question I would like all the parents to ask. I'd like them to ask us. What is it that you see in your life or in your world that you would want to fix when you grow up? What is it? What is the problem, the issue that you see in your life or in your world that you would want to work on, to resolve, to wrestle with when you grow up? I mean, can you see how this is an opening question?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what if you want to create something beautiful? That's not solving a problem. That's not fixing something.
Now you're fixing something by creating something beautiful. The question is about, it's no longer who you want to be, but what you want to, like, what is the, what is it you want to bring to the world that is worthy of your life? Yes. What is it that you want to bring to this world that is worthy of your life? That one life that you have. Now close your eyes and be with that. How does that feel? Because it's not only addressed to children. No, as long as we walk this earth, this is a question for our life. It's never too late to begin answering that question. Seeking to answer that question, wrestling to answer that question for ourselves. That's expanding. Now you can open your eyes. See, I was right from the beginning. I don't mind admitting it. I was right from the beginning. Passover is really a challenging holiday for us to relate to. Obviously. There's nothing in that story that pertains to our lives today. Obviously. You know, even those families of Pharaoh at the time that more or less represented the 1% of the population and owned 99% of the wealth of Egypt has nothing to do with the society we live in today. We're not slaves. We're consumers. There's a rabbi, Rabbi Hillel. He lived 2,000 years ago, just at the time where the Passover Seder became the Passover Seder. I'm going to imagine that he was inspired by the story of Passover, by the story of liberation from the great pharaohs, because he lived in the time where Judea was under Roman rules, another centuries of being ruled by big pharaohs. And he had a rebellious soul. And he, I'm sure, just gravitated towards the story of Passover. And he too asked a question. One of the most powerful questions recorded in the Talmud. He said, Im ein ani li, mi li. וכשאני לעצמי, מה אני? ואם לא עכשיו, אין מתי. Which means, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, then what am I? And if not now, then when?